Good afternoon. It's 1:30 p.m. Tuesday afternoon, August 21st, and the markets are having a pretty big day today. You can see on this chart of the Russell 2000, small caps are having a huge move. The S&P 500 broke to new all-time highs, and interestingly enough, some tech names aren't really responding quite in the same manner, right? I mean, you can see we do have a nice little move on the Qs, but we're not above all-time highs, and I think a part of that is the fact that there's actually some big tech names that have been a little bit depressed lately, and they might be presenting some decent opportunities right now. The reason I'm putting out this video is with the way the market's been these last few days, right? We go back to a chart of IWM. You can see we had a potential breakdown that ended up turning out to be a false breakdown, and we sort of zoomed up and started moving towards new highs. And this is something we discussed during last week's Wednesday webinar. The issue being is with the swiftness with which we've moved up, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to find trades that aren't already at new highs or just underneath or at resistance. And just in general, despite the fact that the markets are doing really well over the last few days, it's been a little bit more difficult to find actionable setups. And so what I wanted to do is point out a few setups that are lagging behind because they are part of the big tech names, and seeing that maybe if the markets continue to run up, and I think this might have some legs. This breakout that we're seeing, this might be a nice 2 or 3 day run to new highs. This is a pretty substantial breakout. The same thing with the S&P 500. It's something we've been waiting for a while for them to pick up enough steam to really push out to new highs, and if this can continue for a few more days, well, then the tech names are going to have to sort of go ahead and follow along. And so with that in mind, I wanted to point out 3 different names that are really big names and hopefully can sort of get their act together and start following what's going on with the rest of the markets, right? So first I want to look at is Facebook. Now, Facebook's one we've been watching since earnings. They had a pretty big gap down, and then they've been sort of sitting here at a nice horizontal level of support as they try to maintain this channel that they're starting to lose. And you can see we're actually below that channel, which is not really the best of signs, but as often happens when you have such a long-term uptrend, eventually you do break that trend line. Well, that doesn't mean that you topped out. A lot of times what happens is it just needs to sort of trade sideways a bit, maybe downshift in gears, and then start resuming its uptrend at a little bit of a different trajectory or base out. What we're hoping for here is that at the very least we continue to confirm this 170 to 172 area as support and start making our way back up and testing the 180s and testing the moving averages. So what I'm looking for out of Facebook is a nice little reversal. You can see we've got a couple of nice wicks going on in the last couple of days, actually last 3 days, and we can sort of just maybe continue this bottoming process here and break out in the afternoon today or early tomorrow and start to get above this 173 to 175 area. Then I think that this ends up being a pretty decent bottoming play with which we could sort of take advantage of some of this lagging momentum in the tech sector. So this is one that I like. Now again, I'm not looking for a move back up into 210, 215, 220. What I'm looking for right now is a move up into the 180 area, possibly up to the 200 period moving average, and to see if it can sort of make its way back into this ascending trend line and try to make its way above it. It's probably going to struggle at the 20 period moving average, but we can get a nice 4 or 5 points in a day or two if they can get their act together, and particularly if the Qs breaks out to new all-time highs in the next day or two. Right, so that's one that I'm looking at. Another one I'm looking at, a little bit in a better spot, is Microsoft. You can see Microsoft has a nice little convergence of trend lines coming up. We've got the horizontal support, and this is admittedly very short-term horizontal support, but we've got some support just above $100 at about 105. We've got this nice intermediate-term uptrend, and then we have the recent pullback. It's in a very nice tight channel, right? And again, if we can get any kind of momentum going into in the tech names, particularly in the bigger tech names, and this thing can sort of break out of this descending channel or descending wedge, then we should get a move back up towards at least the previous highs, and then see what happens as we get forward. So this is the one. This is a chart that looks, it's pretty it's pretty textbook as far as what's going on here. Might still need another little bit of dropping to try to retest that 105 again, but depending on how the markets behave and if tech names can sort of resume their move higher, then this should probably just break out of the wedge now and start making its way above maybe the 20-pair moving average and then back up to 110. So that was a little bit easier to see, and I think the chart kind of speaks for itself. And then the last one we have is Google. And Google, again, is also not quite in as precarious a situation as Facebook. You can see very similar to Microsoft. We have a nice ascending trend line that we're kind of up against. Nice intermediate term support line that we are finding support at. And then we have sort of a descending trend line, not quite as clean as the one we saw in Microsoft, but the same idea, right? We've pulled back over the last 2 weeks or so and are now finding some support. And if we can break out of this little tangle or this little sort of convergence of trend lines, then we should get a move back up towards the previous highs. At the very least, maybe test this trajectory, right? And so make our way back up to maybe 1240, 1250. And again, I'm not looking for massive hits right now. The market is starting to get a little overbought. I think that there's still a few more days of upwards price action, but in general, what I'm trying to do right now is catch a swing of 2 or 3 days and start making my way up to resistance. And again, the reason I'm looking for something like this is because most of the good names have already moved higher, right? You take a look at some of the names that we've been trading in my Patreon site, and they've already broken out and they're moving nicely. And at this point, it's just a matter of watching them work, right? There's not much we could do other than sit there and let them do their thing while they perform, right? And so there's a few others, but in general, they're all moving nicely, right? And at this point, it's just a matter of letting them do their thing and trailing the stop. But there's not a lot of newer setups that are giving us the good risk reward that we need, right? So what we have to do is continue to extract profits on the trades that we've had and start looking at other names that are at least giving us good risk reward. And if they don't play out, then no big deal. You don't take the trade. But if they do set up nicely, then we can get a nice 2 or 3 day push up and be able to get a little bit more profits from these names while still maintaining a good risk reward ratio. So that's what I'm thinking about as far as what I'm looking at today. I'm mostly managing a lot of the trades that we've had. We've had a really good month again. The last couple of months have been very good for us as far as finding swing trading opportunities. And as I said, these last 2 or 3 days have been challenging because most of the good names have moved already. And what we have to do now is, or at least as far as what I've been looking for, the laggards that are still giving me good risk reward. So that's the strategy as far as today is concerned. We will meet tomorrow, Wednesday webinar. So anyone that's interested, follow me on Twitter @StockDarts. And I will send out a link for our free Wednesday webinar tomorrow. It's at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Other than that, have a good rest of today.